They found the body face down in the dust, arms twisted like he had been praying to the ground. No gun, no tracks, just blood soaking into Texas earth that had already swallowed too many names. The sheriff wrote one word in his journal that night: returned. No one asked what he meant. Everyone already knew. Because in 1873, in a stretch of West Texas that did not appear on most maps, men did not simply die. They were taken back to something older than law, older than God, if you listened closely enough. And every trail, every whisper, led to the same name. A name spoken only once, then never again. The boy who escaped chains. The boy who learned to kill without blinking. The boy who did not die when he should have. This is not the story of a hero. This is the story of what happens when a child survives something no child should, and the land remembers. No birth record exists for the boy. No church ledger. No plantation book. No family Bible with pressed flowers and careful ink. Only a line scratched into a cotton estate inventory in eastern Louisiana, dated 1849. Male. Approximate, 8. Weak lungs. Keeps staring. That was it. The boy had no name then. Names were expensive. Names were earned. He was owned by a preacher who believed silence was a kind of holiness. Every morning before the sun rose, the boy was taken to the chapel shed. Not to pray, to watch. Punishment was never loud. No screaming. No whips cracking for drama. Just long sermons about sin. About obedience. About how pain was proof that God was close. The boy learned early that God never answered. But something else did. At night, while others slept, the walls of the shed clicked and breathed. The boy swore the shadows moved closer when he cried. He stopped crying. That was the first thing the West would later notice about him. He did not beg. In the summer of 1863, the plantation burned. No one knows how it started. The official story blamed a lantern. The unofficial one blamed the boy. Witnesses said they saw him walking away from the main house before the flames reached the roof. Not running. Walking. The preacher's body was found in the chapel shed, knees bent, hands folded. Like he had finally learned how to pray. The boy was gone. Dogs tracked him west for 3 days before stopping dead at a dry riverbed, whining, refusing to move. One handler later said it felt like the ground was warning them. The Civil War was still tearing the country apart, and nobody went looking very hard. A child disappearing was not news. Especially not that kind of child. But something followed him. People along the trails told stories. A barefoot boy seen speaking to empty space. A child sleeping beside dead animals, untouched by flies. And always the same detail. His eyes looked older than anyone alive. Texas did not save the boy. It finished him. He learned guns fast. Too fast. Men taught him because he never missed, and because he never smiled. He worked cattle drives, guarded wagons, cleaned blood off saloon floors. He watched men die for money, pride, and boredom. And he learned something important. Fear moves faster than bullets. By 1873, towns stopped writing his name down. Not because they didn't know it. Because writing it felt like inviting him back. People said he could hear lies. That guns jammed when aimed at him. That churches locked their doors when he rode in. But the truth was worse. He didn't hunt men. He waited for them to remember what they had done. And when they did, he was already there. By 1873, everyone knew of him. No one said his name out loud. In court records, he was listed as the colored gunman. In church notes, he was called the judgment rider. Among children, he was something worse. They said if you lied near him, your tongue would feel heavy. If you stole, your hands would shake until they bled. If you hurt someone weaker than you, you would dream of fire. Adults laughed this off, until the dreams came true. 3 men vanished from the town of Red Hollow in 1 week. All 3 had once worked at a church-run orphan house back east. All 3 had new names. All 3 left behind rooms that smelled like burnt wood. No bodies. Just ash in the shape of kneeling figures. The sheriff quit 2 days later. The orphan house no longer exists. Not because it closed, but because no one would admit it ever stood there. It was run by traveling ministers who believed children were born sinful. Correction was daily. Mercy was rare. Years later, records showed dozens of missing names. No burial ground. No adoption notes. Only sermons about obedience. When the gunslinger passed through the region, he stopped writing for 2 days. He stayed near the ruins. Witnesses said he spoke to the empty building like it could hear him. Not angry. Not loud. Just calm. On the 3rd night, fire rose again. Slow. Controlled. Like a ritual done many times before. By morning, the ruins were gone. The land looked smooth. Too smooth. As if something had been buried deep on purpose. A preacher named Elias Moore tried to stop him. Moore found the gunslinger outside a saloon just before dawn. He begged. He cried. He said he had changed. He admitted what had happened in Louisiana. In the orphan houses. In the church sheds where no windows existed. He said God had forgiven him. The gunslinger listened. Then he asked one question. Did the children? Moore was found later that morning in the church pews. Eyes open. Mouth full of dirt. The bell rope had been wrapped around his neck, pulled just tight enough. On the altar was a single mark burned into the wood. A child's height. A child's reach. People assumed the gunslinger was empty inside. They were wrong. He did not sleep well. He did not dream like others. He remembered. At night, witnesses saw him sit awake, gun across his knees, staring into the dark. Sometimes he spoke. Sometimes he whispered apologies to no one. Once, a woman swore she saw shadows gather behind him. Not threatening him. Listening. Whatever lived in him did not push him forward. It waited. And every town that hid its past felt the same pressure. Like something under the floorboards was breathing again. One sheriff tried to document it all. Names. Places. Patterns. He noticed something chilling. Every man who vanished had once worked under church authority. Every death traced back to discipline. Every victim had believed they were forgiven. The sheriff wrote, "He is not killing for revenge. He is finishing unfinished confessions." The notebook ended mid-sentence. The sheriff disappeared 2 nights later. The notebook was found open. No blood. Just one sentence added at the end. Now you remember. The town of Black Crossing tried something new. They locked everything. Church doors barred. Windows nailed shut. Children pulled inside before sunset. No sermons. No bells. They believed silence would protect them. The gunslinger arrived at dusk. He did not enter the town. He stopped at the edge, where the ground dipped and the grass grew thin. He dismounted. Kneeling, he pressed his hand to the dirt. People watching from behind curtains said his shoulders tensed, like he had just heard a voice only he could hear. That night, no one died. But no one slept, because beneath the floorboards, something moved. Slow. Heavy. Like buried things shifting. By morning, 3 buildings had collapsed inward. Not burned. Not broken. Folded. And under each ruin, they found old rooms. Hidden rooms. Places meant to keep sound from escaping. The gunslinger was gone. For years, the gunslinger believed he was in control. That he chose who faced him. That he chose when the gun was drawn. That belief began to crack. He started losing time. Waking up miles from where he remembered stopping. Finding blood on his hands with no memory of firing. Seeing marks carved into trees he did not recall touching. At night, he dreamed again. Not of fire. Of rooms. Small. Dark. Hands on his shoulders forcing him to kneel. A voice telling him pain was love. He woke screaming for the first time since childhood. And in the silence after, something inside him whispered back. Not words. Permission. Outside Dry Creek, an old woman stopped him. She did not flinch. Did not pray. She looked at him the way mothers look at wounds. She said, "You're not dragging it anymore. It's walking with you." He asked what she meant. She told him the land keeps memory. That pain sinks deep. That when too much is buried, it looks for a body. "You ran," she said, "but you carried it with you." She gave him no blessing. Only a warning. If you stop moving, it will finish the job without you. That night, the gunslinger buried something of his own. His first gun. There was one church no record could explain. No founding date. No builder's name. No cemetery. It stood alone on flat land. Doors always open, always empty. The gunslinger went inside. The air was thick. Not dusty. Heavy. Beneath the altar, he found a trapdoor. Below it, a room with no windows. Scratches on the walls. Hundreds of them. At child height. He dropped to his knees. And for the first time, the thing inside him did not wait. It moved through him. When he came back to himself, the church was gone. Not burned. Erased. The land smooth again. Too smooth. Word spread that guns no longer worked near him. Men pulled triggers. Hammers fell. Nothing happened. Not jams. Refusal. One man screamed that the weapon felt hot, like it hated him. The gunslinger stopped carrying a rifle. He didn't need one anymore. Fear arrived first. Memory arrived second. And whatever followed him arrived last. There was one thing he would not do. He would not hurt children. ever. When a man threatened a boy to draw him out, the gunslinger did not shoot. He walked forward instead. Witnesses said the man dropped dead before contact. No wound. No mark. Just eyes wide, mouth open, like he had seen something coming out of the gunslinger's shadow. After that, people stopped calling him a man. They started calling him a gate. It happened in a town that no longer exists. No marker. No ruins. Just a blank stretch of land where even weeds refused to grow. The gunslinger stayed there 3 nights. On the 4th morning, he walked into the center of town and spoke. Not loudly. Not angry. He told them who he was. He told them about the shed. The sermons. The men who said pain was holy. And then he said the thing no one wanted to hear. It didn't stay there, he said. It followed me. He explained that when enough children are broken in the same way, something forms. Not a spirit. Not a demon. A memory with weight. Something that learns how to move. The room went silent. Because everyone there understood what he was really saying. This wasn't about him anymore. Men in clean coats came next. They asked questions. They wrote notes. They pretended this was about law. But they avoided churches. They avoided orphan houses. They only wanted the gunslinger. They said he was dangerous. Unstable. A threat to order. He laughed once. A short sound. Broken. You're late, he told them. They tried to arrest him. No shots were fired. No bodies were found. Only empty clothes folded neatly in the dirt. After that, records stopped mentioning him. Officially, he never existed. He grew tired. Not of killing. Of carrying. He returned to the dry riverbed where the dogs had once refused to go farther. The place where his trail ended. He sat down and waited. The shadows gathered again. Closer than ever. This time, he did not resist. He spoke to the thing inside him like a father speaks to a frightened child. He told it the truth. That what happened was real. That it was wrong. That it was over. The ground cracked. Witnesses miles away heard something like a breath finally released. At dawn, the gunslinger was gone. So was the riverbed. In its place, a long, shallow scar in the earth. After that, things changed. Not for the better. For the quieter. Churches rebuilt, but removed basements. Orphan houses closed. Records were lost. People stopped asking questions. But sometimes, late at night, parents said their children asked strange things. Why do walls have scratches? Why does the ground feel sad? Why do grown-ups lie when they pray? And when asked where they heard such things, they pointed nowhere. Years later, a single journal surfaced. No author name. Just one final entry. He wasn't a monster. He was what happened when the truth was buried too deep. The land did not forgive. It remembered. And it chose a body to carry the weight. The page ended with one sentence burned into the paper. If it ever returns, it won't need a gun. No grave was ever found. No cross. No marker. No name carved into stone. The newspapers of the time claimed the gunslinger rode south into Mexico. Others said he died in a border fight. Some said he never existed at all. But old ranchers knew better. They said the land swallowed him the way it swallows lightning. Not to destroy it. To ground it. Because after he vanished, something stopped happening. Children stopped disappearing from church houses. Punishments grew quieter. Basements were filled in. Not out of kindness. Out of fear. Even now, there are places in Texas where nothing grows. No cattle graze. No birds land. Locals avoid them without knowing why. Surveyors report tools failing. Maps refusing to stay accurate. And always, under the soil. Scratch marks. Not random. Organized. Measured. At a child's height. Some families keep rules they never explain. Never lock a child in a dark room. Never confuse pain with love. Never tell a child that suffering makes them pure. They say these rules came from grandparents, who heard them from people who never wrote anything down, because writing it down felt dangerous. Like reminding the land. History likes clean heroes. It does not like mirrors. The gunslinger forced people to remember who they were before they pretended to be holy. That made him unacceptable. So he was buried under myths, folded into silence, left out of textbooks. But forgetting never erased him. It only delayed him. This was never a ghost story. It was a warning. When suffering is hidden long enough, it learns how to move. When enough voices are silenced, they find another way to speak. The boy did not become a monster. The monster was already there. He just gave it legs. And the West listened. Some stories were not lost. They were buried. Not because they weren't true, but because they still are. If you ever pass a place where the ground feels wrong, where the air feels heavy, where silence feels watched. Leave, and do not dig, because some memories do not want peace. They want witnesses.